Hey, and welcome back. So, now we've come to the Brawler module. Now, let me just say right off the bat here that the Brawler module is not, let's say, finished. It's not really finished. So, and this actually goes for the default Brawler module as well in NESmaker. I even think Joe mentioned it in one of the official tutorial videos that you're probably gonna run into issues when making a brawler game with NESmaker. And I haven't done too much to improve that here in the BBI modules. So this might actually be a shorter video than the other two, the adventure and arcade platformer, because of that fact. Now I just noticed that there is in fact a little bug that I made in the BBI modules, and that's if you want to stop scrolling when the enemies appear on the screen, and then when you defeat the enemy you continue scrolling. That doesn't work in the BBI modules, and that does work in the default NESmaker setup. Let me show you what I mean here. So I have a little test game here. So if I just walk over here, now this is made with the default NESmaker setup. So if I walk over here, we have a little guy appearing, and you can see the scrolling stopped. But if I defeat this guy, then I can continue scrolling. And then I get to this guy, or these guys, scrolling stops, and when I defeat them, I can continue scrolling. So that, unfortunately, is something that I broke in the BBI modules. So I just wanted you to know about that. Right. So with that out of the way, let's make a quick test game to see what we can do with the BBI modules here. So I'm just gonna start a new project. Blank tile set. I'm gonna call this Brawler Test, and I'm gonna choose the Brawler BBI. Okay, and I'm gonna save it. Brawler Test, not text but test. There we go. Right, so I'm just gonna do what I did in the previous videos. I'm gonna use the graphics from my assets. So I just delete the graphics that I just made here and go to tutorial assets, BBI assets, brawler, and graphics. So I'm just gonna copy all the files in there, go back to the main graphic assets folder, brawler test, and paste them in here. So then I'll just do what I did before. I just import all palettes, and again from the tutorial assets folder, all palettes, all monster palettes, and game objects, and monster objects, and just gonna make a monster group here, monsters 1. All right, so there we go. Now we have something to work with. Now, like before, I'm not gonna import the inputs. We're gonna set them up manually. So I'm gonna go to scripts, input scripts, base 45 BBI, game, mod brawler base, and inputs. So I think I mentioned this before, but here in the brawler module we can also move in diagonal directions, which I personally feel is very important in a game like this. I don't want to move just up, down, left and right in a game like this. So I'm gonna include all the move input scripts. And I'm also going to include stop moving, and there are two attacks here. So there's one input script for both attacks, attack 1 and attack 2. And I'm also just going to show you how easy it is to pause the game. I'm also going to include this pause script. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the input editor and set up the inputs. So for my main game, when I hold right, I'm going to move right with action. When I hold left, I'm going to move left with action. Hold up, I'm going to move, where's move? There we go, move up with action. Hold down, I'm going to move down with action. And now the diagonals. Remember, like I said in the adventure module, when we're doing diagonals, it's important to get this, to set this up in the correct order. So first up, down, left, right, and then the diagonals. So hold up, right. Then we say move up, right with action. Hold up, left. Move up, left with action. Hold down, right. Move down, right with action. And hold down, left. Move down, left with action. Yeah. Now I'm going to set up the release. What's going to happen when we release the directions? So release right. Stop moving. Release left. Same thing, stop moving. Release up. Stop moving. Release down. Stop moving. Okay, so now we have movement set up. So I'm just gonna quickly create a little screen here. So I'm just gonna use the my assets here. Try to do this as quickly as possible, just so that we have something to work with. So make it look sort of decent, I guess. Right, so there we have the sidewalk, and I'm going to just going to create some bushes here in the background, like that. Yeah, let's see. Let me just do something like this, I guess. Yeah, sure, that's fine. And I'll just hold down my 6 key to draw some black tiles down here to draw the street. And finally, I'm just gonna put some of these in here, like something like that. Okay, and I'm going to set up solid collision up here where the bushes are, and I'm just going to have solid collision at the very bottom here. And like I said before, the first one of the first things that I do is that I go into screen info and I set up day monsters. So monster group, that's monsters 1, and I set up all the palettes here. And the same thing for triggered, just in case. So set up the monster group and sprite palettes. And then I'm just going to place my player in here. Okay, so here we have a basic screen. Now I've set up all the stuff here in screen info. So what I can do now is just copy this screen, paste a few screens like that. So now I should actually be able to test movement. So let's do that right now. Let's just test to see if the movement is working. Moving right, and we are scrolling, that's great. Moving left, up, down, and now let's try the diagonals. Yeah, great. So it looks like movement is working fine. Now the scrolling here, just like the default NESmaker setup, this game only scrolls in one direction. So, if you have this in place, great stuff. Now, let's look at something that's special for this module. Now, most of the stuff here is pretty close to what's how you would do it in the default Brawler module, default NESmaker Brawler module. So I haven't done too many changes for this. But let's look at something that's special for the Brawler module here. So I'm gonna go to we already included the attack input scripts. So I'm gonna go to my input editor. I'm gonna go to main, set for main game. If I press the B button, then I'm going to do the attack 1 with action. If I press the A button, I'm going to do the attack 2 here. Now, the way I've set things up here, they both basically do the same thing. It just looks a little different. So one attack is not stronger than the other. So we have that in place, and let's also just set up pressing start, the start button. If we do that, we're gonna run this pause script. Okay, so now let's see if that works. So I'm moving here in diagonals. Now I'm gonna press the B button, and now I'm punching. I'm gonna press, no, that was, yeah, B, and then the A button, and then he kicks. If I'm walking, pressing the button, the guy stops and does his attack. So it's, like I said, it's very close to the default NESmaker setup. But if you haven't made a Brawler game with that module, let me just show you how it's done. So let's take a quick look at the attack scripts here. So what's happening is when I press the A or B button for the attack, first of all, this guy goes into an action step where he's attacking. So we have attack 1 right here. Then he looks like this. But in addition to going into this action step, we also create a new game object, which is this one, the fist. So we create that right in front of him. So we need to line it up right here. So it looks like it's a part of his animation. So we need to do a good job making sure that the fist shows up exactly at this position. That's what's happening in the input script. So at the very start of the input script here, we can see that there are a few constants here. So with a few values. So what are those values? Well, first of all, it says here player with attack 1. So what's the width of the player? He's 16 pixels. So we need to make sure, because now he's facing right. So if he's facing right, we need to create the new object at the right side. So 16 pixels, because we start counting pixels at the very left of the objects. So 16 pixels to the right, that's where we need to create the new object. Then the next one is attack 1 width. So what's the width of this new object we're creating? Well, that's 8 pixels. All right, and that object is of course this fist. That's 8 pixels here. Then we say we set the offsets. So attack 1 offset for the X position, and this is when he's facing right. Now, how many pixels do we need to offset when he's facing right? Well, I just put the width of the player in here. Like I said, when he's facing right, we need to create this new object just at the right of the player. What about if he's facing left? This is a little, looks a little strange. But what this is, remember the NES screen is 256 pixels wide. So what I do here, I take a full screen width, 256 pixels. And then I subtract attack 1 width from that. Attack 1 width, that's the one up here. That's the width of the attack object, so the fist. So 256 minus 8. So when it's facing left, that's gonna be our offset. So it might be a little strange to do it that way, but we need to make sure that the object is created. The width of the object needs to be just to the left of the player object. So that's the offset and stuff like that. And there's something like that in both of these attack scripts. They're both actually pretty much the same, just with slightly different values. Attack 1 and attack 2. But if we continue the attack script here, I made a cooldown for the player attacks. So we can't just mash the A or B button and go crazy with attacking. There's actually a cooldown here. So like it says in here in the comment, we can only punch when the cooldown timer is 0. So we check the value of the player punch cooldown timer. If it's branch if equal, that means if the value here is 0, then we can continue. If it's not 0, then we RTS. Basically, we exit this script. But let's say that it's 0, so we can attack. Then we continue down here. And then we say, first of all, we get the direction of the player, the facing direction. So if you do it like this, LDA object direction comma X, or comma X, we just made sure that the player object is loaded into X here. So we know that now we're getting the direction for the player. And if we say load A with object direction comma X, the direction for the player, and we say and hashtag percent, when you use the percent sign, that's a binary number. So if we say percent 000, so 5 zeros and 111, 3 ones at the end there. What that means is that now we're getting the facing direction of the player. If we take this whole thing, then we will get these first 4 zeros here, the first 4 digits. That's the moving direction. The one here in the middle, that's if we were using move towards objects, stuff like that. So we don't have to worry about that. But the last 3 bits in object direction, the last 3 bits in object direction is the facing direction. So that's a long explanation, but now we're getting the facing direction of the player, and we're storing that in temp D. We're going to use that a little further down in the code. Right, so we're getting the facing direction, and then we're making sure that the player object stops when he's attacking, we want him to stop. Then we say change the action step of the player to action step 2, which is the animation for attack 1. So that means that for the attack 1 script, it's going to go into this. 2. We're going to change that to 2, right? So that's this action step. Attack 1. I said stop moving here as well. Maybe I don't need to, but whatever. So anyway, at the end of the action here, we go back to the first. So we go back to idle here. So it's gonna just for a brief moment go into action step 2, and then it's gonna go back to idle when that's done. All that happens here in the attack input script. So we do that, and then we say punch cooldown time is about half a second, 30 frames. So we set the cooldown timer to 30 here. And if you remember, at the beginning of the script here, we check the cooldown timer. So this is where we set the timer value. So we do those things, get the direction, stop moving, change action step, set the timer, and then now we're going to use the whatever the facing direction of the player was here. So if the player is facing left, then we say attack left. So we go down here, and then we make sure that the we get the right offset values for this new object. Where do we want to create this new attack object, this fist? Where do we want to create it in relation to the player? Well, we got the facing direction of the player, and we have set the offsets up here at the beginning of the script. So by combining those things, so here we say load A with object X high, that's the X position of the player, and we add the attack 1 offset X left. That was this one here. So now we're making sure that we're going to add 256 minus 8. I don't know how, I can't do math right now, but it's a pretty big number, right? So we're adding that number to whatever the player's X position is. And that means that we're actually wrapping around, because the number is so big that we go all the way to the edge of the screen, and then we go back to the left edge and continue counting from there. So we're going to end up with 8 pixels to the left of the player. So it's a little strange to do it that way, but it works. So that's how we set the left offset. And then we load whatever screen the player is on. This is a little strange thing. Subtract with 0. Let's not go into that right now. Basically, we're just getting what screen the player is on right now, because this is going to be a scrolling level. So it's important that we're creating the fist object on the same screen as the player. Right, so we do the same thing here with, like we did with the X position. We get the Y position of the player, and we say we add the offset for the Y position when it's facing left. So offset Y left, that's 8, because let's see, attack left. So I need to place this new object 8 pixels down. So we want it right here in front of him, right here. This is probably something you have to play around with, experiment with, to get things right, to get the object to appear to match, to make it match the animation, attack animation of the player. So that's if it's facing left. But if it's not facing left, we do this the same thing only for the right offsets, because he's just going to face left and right. In this module, even though he's walking up and down, he's just going to face left or right, just like a platform game. So we know that if he's not facing left, then he's facing right. So if he's facing right, we do the same thing that we did down here, only with the right offset values. So when we have those values and we store them into temp A, temp B, and temp C, then we have the values that we need. So then we can create this attack object. That's what we do down here. So create object on screen. By the way, on scrolling games, this is the one you need to use. There are two macros. One is just called create object. That's for games that do not have scrolling. But for games that have scrolling, we need to use this one, create object on screen. Alright, so where should we create this new object? Well, we use these variables that we set up here. We calculated the offsets and all that. So we use temp A, temp B, and then we have obj attack 1. Now, if we go to our project settings, user constants, we have this thing called obj attack 1 here, which right now it's set to 1 here. That means game object 1. So we're going to create this object right now. Okay, so we're going to create it at that position, game object 1, at this X and Y position, and this 0 here, that means this new object is going to be created with action step 0. We don't have any action steps, just have this one action step for this fist. So that's why we set 0 here, and temp C, that's to make sure that this new object appears on the same screen as the player. So that's what we do here. And when this new fist object is created, then we say load A with temp D. So temp D, again, that was the facing direction of the player. So we load that and we store that into the object direction of the fist, basically transferring the facing direction of the player onto this new object, the fist attack object, so that the fist is going to be facing the same direction as the player. That's what we do here. Then that's it, and we exit the script. So it's a long explanation maybe, but I thought it was important to explain what actually happens when you attack. So if, for example, you create an attack object down here, the last game object, then you would just have to go into user constants to this obj attack 1, and you would have to change this to 15, for example, if you use this last one. So that's the attack script. Now, the way I've set this up right now is not really optimal, because let's look at the player right now. If we go to object details, bounding box, his bounding box is down here. Now this is kind of like what you would do in the adventure module, something like that, the top-down games. This is to create the illusion that he can actually, let's go to the level up here. So if the player walks all the way up here, we don't want him to stop when his head gets to the, let me start the game here. It's a little easier to see if, so here we go. So I don't want the player to stop right there. So remember, this row of bushes, those are solid tiles. So I don't want my player to stop when he reaches this point. I want him to go all the way up here. So that's why we have the bounding box set so low. It's because I want him to move all the way up here to the edge of the sidewalk. So it looks a little more natural, I think. Right, but because of that, now I need to adjust the attack objects. So I'm gonna go into attack 1 here. And by the way, let's first of all take a look at attack right. So when I attack right, the object is going to appear one sprite tile below here. So it's going to appear here. All right. I'm going to adjust this fist to be 2 tiles tall. And I'm going to make sure that this bottom tile here is a blank one. I use the lower right tile in my game object graphics. Always use a blank one for that one. So now I set a blank tile here under this fist. Now this fist is 2 sprite tiles tall. So it looks okay. And the reason I do that is because now I'm going to set a bounding box for this fist. That bounding box is going to be all of these, both these tiles. So a pretty big bounding box. And that's because we need to adjust the bounding box of the attack object in relation to the player and the monster objects. Because if you look at the monster object down here, he also has a bounding box that's very low. So we need to make sure that this attack object sort of lines up with where we think the monster is going to be. So the fist object would be somewhere here. So if the bounding box of the fist object is this big, it's gonna collide with his bounding box down here. Now if we had a little bounding box of the fist up here, then it wouldn't collide with the monster bounding box. Hopefully that makes sense. So I'm gonna make that 2 tiles tall. Now let's go back to the player object and take a look at attack 2 right. Now for the attack 2 right, that's actually let's see. So the attack 2 right is probably gonna appear right here at the bottom. So how does the attack 2 look? It looks like this. So this is actually okay, because the foot here is going to appear all the way at the bottom. So this just needs to be 1 tile tall. And that's going to work out great, because all of this, we have a bounding box that covers the entire object. And if that appears down here, right where we can see his foot is going to line up down there, that's going to work out great, because we are in fact going to hit this monster bounding box with that foot, because it's so low. So it's going to line perfectly up with this monster bounding box. Okay, so now I'm going to place a monster here to see if this works. So let's see. There we have our monster. Now I'm going to punch him first. Yeah. Now I'm going to kick him. Yeah. So both the punch attack and the kick attack was able to both of those attacks hit the monster object. So it's just a matter of sort of lining up the objects, thinking about the bounding boxes, where they are in relation to the player object and the monster object. So it's a little experiment. Probably going to experiment a little bit with that, but it's not too hard actually. So that's pretty standard for the Brawler module, pretty close to the default NESmaker setup. But let's look at something different. So I added a new tile type here, and that's something that I think goes well with a game like this, and I just called that tile trash can. So I made a trash can graphic here. Let's see if I just put it right there. Yeah, there we go. So that's my trash can. Now I'm gonna set up this tile with trash can collision, like that. Now this has trash can collision. So what that trash can tile does, it's not really anything special, but let's just take a quick look. So trash can, it first of all, it changes the graphic and collision of the tile. Now it says 32 here. That's the tile right here. Because even these tiles, they are 16 by 16 pixels, so they are twice as big as Sprite tiles. But we still count these tiles as 8 by 8 pixel tiles. It's a little confusing because we can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tile graphics here on the top. So if you go down, you would think that you would start at 9, for example, but we don't. We count these in 8 by 8 pixel tiles, which means that the lower half of this first one is tile 16. So 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, so on. That means that this first one here on the second row, that's actually tile 32. So it's a little confusing, but that's how this system works. So when I write tile graphic 32 here, that's the second tile, the first tile on the second row up here, which is this graphic. So that's what this trash can is going to change into, and it's going to change into a null collision. And like I mentioned before, when I do this kind of stuff, especially in scrolling games, I always do a JSR do wait frame after that. It's because now we're changing background graphics, and I'm going to wait 1 frame to make sure that the screen is updated properly before we continue. And like I said before, we're just waiting 1 frame, not 1 second or anything like that, just 1 frame. So probably not even going to notice that. Then we say we get the position of the tile, and we say then we create a new object. So this object is obj health pickup, which is an object I've set up here in project settings, user constants, obj, let's see, can I find it? There we go. Obj health pickup, which is set to 4 right now. Game object 4. So to sum it up, this tile, when we attack this tile, it's going to change into a new graphic. It's going to change it to a null collision, and we're going to create this object, game object 4, which in my setup here is a health pickup. I just made sure to check this checkbox for this object. So that's what happens with this trash can tile. Now if we don't, you can see here at the very top, we check if whatever's colliding with this tile is a player weapon. If it's not a player weapon, then we just make sure that this tile is solid. So let's see how that works. Really nothing, anything really special, but now you can see it's a solid tile. Whatever is colliding with this tile right now is not a player weapon. In this case, it's a player. But if I attack it, then the tile changes and we create this new object. All right, I just wanted to show you that that's there and how that works. So the other thing that's changed from the default Brawler module to this one is that, like with every module in the BBI module setup, I've moved the do load screen 16 to bank 16, which means that we have more space for custom code, or it's easier to add custom code. And because I did that, then I also added animated tiles. So every module has animated tiles. We just go to screen info, set animated tiles down here to 1. But like we talked about before, you need to set up all the graphics for that. Yeah, let's not go into that, but the code is in place for animated tiles. Now, we also have this checkbox for rain effect. And I could click this checkbox right now and we would get rain. Now, if you do that, then it's important. Let's go to project settings, user constants. If you want to have rain effect in your game, then you need to go to project settings, user constants, and you need to find where it says Sprite rain. So Sprite rain down here, it's set to 126 right now. What's that? Well, if I go to my pixel editor and I open up my game object tiles. So that number is the tile number in here. So we're starting to count here at the top left corner, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, blah, blah, blah. And we go all the way down, first this row, then this row, and this row. So we go all the way down to here. This very last one, bottom right one, that's 127. This one is 126. So if you're gonna use this rain effect, you need to make sure that there's something in this tile. And this looks okay. So I could actually, if I wanted rain here now, I could just click this checkbox and start my game. And there we have rain. So you might notice something up here, this little flashing. Now that's because these this rain, those are also sprites. And I'm sure you know that the NES can only handle 8 sprites on a horizontal row. So we can only have 8 sprites after another. We already have 8 sprites up here. All these zeros are sprites. This health, the player health, that's also 8 sprites. So when our rain graphic goes past those sprites, you're gonna get that flashing. So that's something to keep in mind. We could reduce this, but it requires a little modification. Not too much, but it's something to keep in mind. So I'm not going to use rain effect right now. Okay, so that's the basic setup. Now, I'm not sure that we should do a lot more with this module, because like I said, I feel like there's so much to do to improve this module, and I even added a new problem with that stop scrolling thing. So I need to fix that. But hopefully now you can see that this is definitely something to play around with. But right now you might have a hard time creating a finished game with this module. But it is what it is. So I'm going to continue making improvements in the future, but this is what we have right now. Before we end today, let's just quickly take a look at the monster here. So I'm sure you could see that the monster has a little more, it looks like he has a little more intelligent AI. Let's just take a look here. So if I go over to the screen where the monster guy is, first of all, he stands there just looking around, and then he starts moving towards me. He's following me, and when he gets close to me, that's when he attacks. So that's also pretty close to the how the default NESmaker Brawler module does it. So if you have seen the official tutorial by Joe, it's pretty much the same thing. I'm gonna go into object details on this monster guy. So we start here on action step 0 with an idle animation. Now the idle animation, that's when he's looking back and forth like that, and I have set that up for stop moving. He's gonna stop moving. He's gonna do his idle thing for 3 time units, and then we advance. This next one says, now this is special for the Brawler module. This is not something I did. This is in the default Brawler module. Track player Y value. So he's going to track the player's Y position and advance action proximity, which means you're going to advance the action step when it gets close enough. So this setup here, it's a little far from the other NESmaker modules, and you probably should watch the official tutorial by Joe to understand this a little bit better, because it's kind of hard to remember how to set this up. But yeah, we're not going to go into detail about that. If you want to check that out, you probably should check out Joe's official tutorial. And finally, the monster attack. Let's see here. We have an action here called enemy punch. That's I think that is actually the one from the default NESmaker module. Let's see, enemy punch. Yeah. So it's just a routine here in bank 18, enemy punch. So we actually need to go all the way up to bank 18 to see what that does. So basically, it's pretty much the same as the player attack. We're creating a new object based on the monster's position. And what object are we creating? Well, I made a new object here right after the monster object itself. So I'm not going to use a game object for that, because this attack object is only going to appear on screens where this guy is. So, but other than that, it's pretty much the same like we saw with the player. The monster is changing his action step, and we're creating an attack object at the correct position with the right offsets. Yeah, alright. Actually, I think that's it. Well, there's one more thing we probably should look at. If I go to project settings, script settings, we have this thing with the Sprite HUD. So we have a score, and we have the player's health. but we also draw the enemy health. So the enemy health is pretty much the same as the enemy health is pretty much the same as the player health. We're using the draw sprite HUD macro, and we're using the some of the constants here: sprite health container, sprite health filled, to get the right sprite graphics there. But instead of, like we do with the player, my max health and my health, we have something here called enemy health max temp and enemy health temp. What's that all about? Well, let's take a look at the see if we can find it here. Handle monster hurt under common here. Now, handle monster hurt is pretty standard stuff. I've added this thing where we add a value, you get 10 points for every successful hit on the monster, and we change the action step to 7, which is the hurt action step. But then we set this enemy health timer to 120. That's like it says up here, it's about 2 seconds. And we also say load enemy max health to temp variable, which is used for the sprite HUD. So we're actually loading what object this is, object type. So in this case it's object, this is 16, because game objects are 0 to 15, so the first monster object is object 16. So we're loading that here, and then we're loading the object health. So basically that's what I've set up here. The object health for this object is 4. So I just set that to enemy health max temp, which was what I was using here in the sprite HUD for displaying the monster health. So that's the monster max health. But then we say we decrease the object health and we check if it's 0 or below 0. Yeah, if it's below 0, then we run this monster death code. But if it's not, then we just update the health of the object and we store that into enemy health temp, which is the actual current health of the monster. So this is the max health of the monster, this is the current health of the monster. So that's how we can display the health of the monster. And also, there's also something here. Let's just remove a few of these tabs. We also have this function where, let's take a look. Let's take a quick look at this. If I hit this guy, you'll see, let's see, you'll notice up here now. Notice up here, if I hit this guy, we can see his health appears just for a few seconds and then it goes away. If I hit him again, you can see the health is updated. Now we just have one, he just has one health unit left. So that's handled. First of all, it's of course handled here in the sprite HUD, but what about that thing where it goes away? Well, take a look at first of all, load enemy health. Yeah, let's just go directly to this timer thing. Load enemy health timer. Branch if not equal. Yeah, we're gonna draw the health. So if the value in enemy health timer is not 0, then we're gonna draw this enemy health. So if we say, look, if we go back to the handle monster hurt code, we actually say right here that we're gonna store 120 in enemy health timer. That's about 2 seconds. So when we're hurting the monster, then we're setting this timer for 2 seconds. And in the sprite HUD, we check that timer to see if it's 0 or not. Where does it count down? Well, if we go to project settings, script settings, go down to game down here, we have this thing called handle game timer. Here we have enemy health timer. So we check if enemy health timer is 0. If it's not 0, and this game timer, it ticks every single frame. So we check this. If the enemy health timer is not 0, then we're gonna decrease it by 1. So every frame, if this enemy health timer is not 0, we're gonna decrease it. So if we do the math, we have 60 frames every second. So when we set this enemy health timer to 120 and this thing ticks down, it's gonna be about 2 seconds before this enemy health timer is 0. And if that is 0, then we don't draw this enemy health bar. That's how it goes away automatically like that. Alright, and also one more thing about the game timer. There's also a player punch cooldown here, which works sort of like this, the same way. So if we quickly open the attack script again. So we have right here in the middle of the attack script for the player, we set the cooldown timer to 30, which is about half a second. So when you attack, it's going to be about half a second before you can attack again. And the way that ticks down is here in the game timer. It works the same way as with the enemy health timer. If this is not 0, then we're going to count down every single frame. Alright. Well, I think that's enough for the Brawler module for now. So now you know that this module is certainly not perfect, but I am going to do my best to improve it in the future. But if you want to play around with it, now at least you know a lot of stuff about it, how it works, how things are set up. So at least I hope you'll have some fun with this. Alright, well that's it for now, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.